How's it going, everybody? And welcome to episode 337. Now, this is not a normal episode as such. It's an episode just to highlight a new service that I've added, which is garden consultations, online garden consultations. It's something I actually did a couple of years ago, and technical reasons, as I mentioned millions of times before, really poor at the tech side, but I have somebody helping me in the background now, and we've got that back up and running. So essentially, it's a service that basically you get an online consultation with myself, and they were, they were popular when I had them a couple of years ago, and they're quite useful. And I suppose the purpose of them is it's not a garden design. So I'm not a garden designer, as you guys will know. Anyone that's listening to the podcast for a while will know that I'm not a garden designer. But I try to give practical information that will be able to be actionable and help in the garden. That's what the podcast is about. That's what my workshops are about. And that's what these consultations will be about. So they're very, very practical and actionable. Um, you know, the information and everything that I do is sort of along those lines. But to give you an idea of what a consultation would involve. So essentially, I would just open up two slots per month. That's it. Uh, for the month of June, it's on Friday the 26th of June. So there's two slots available for Friday the 26th of June. And then I'll open up two for July once we get into July and so on. But there'll only ever be two per month available. And the idea of them is if you're working on something in your garden, if you're planning something in your garden, or you're a newbie really only getting started, want to develop something and just not sure how to start it, that's the type of advice. Or if you're a gardener that is, has been growing, has relatively decent experience, but is trying to, create something in the garden and you're reaching a block, or you're struggling to come up with an idea, or you're struggling to move it from, idea to inception, that's, I suppose, where this will help you. So it kind of gets you unstuck. And as I sort of planned out this, the idea of Master My Garden is to help you basically, have the garden that you want, the garden of your dreams. And that could be very, very different for everybody. It could be that you just want a fabulous kitchen garden. You want to be able to bring as much food as possible to the kitchen table. It could be that you want, beautiful cut flower garden. It could be that you want low maintenance, or you want, you know, a kids area. It could be, a wildlife garden. It could be anything. Your idea of the perfect garden will be totally different to somebody else's. And that's the beauty of it. Everybody will have a different kind of outcome or end goal that they will have with their garden. That's the one thing about gardening. I guess it's always evolving and always changing, and everything moves and continues and grows and changes over time. So, but where this will help you is if you have a plan and you want to get to the next stage of it, it's ideal. Some of the consultations I've previously done are with people who have just finished a self-build or have a newly built house, and now they're moving to the outside. And at that stage, a consultation is really, really helpful to point out what should be next, or what to do next, or what's worth looking at next, and the steps and the stages that will allow you to move through. Because when you finish a self-build, you could have piles of clay outside, rubble, uh, services in the ground, and you're just not sure how to move to the next stage. And that's really helpful. So I'll read out some of the reviews from people that have previously done them, and it'll give you an idea. Um, the other thing is, it's really useful if if you have, say, a garden idea in mind and you have a relative budget to go with it. So it could be a case that your budget is €500. It could be a case that your budget is 5,000. It could be 50,000. Whatever your budget is to achieve what it is you want to achieve outside. The consultation will give you a good idea of what the next steps are, or what you should be doing. If you're at the lower end of that budget and you want to create a bed with €500, I'll give you the ideas, the tips, the know-how to be able to create, on a budget. If it's the next level, I'll be able to direct you in the right direction, what you should be doing next, maybe who you should be talking to, maybe suppliers that you could use, materials that you could use, and it'll just make that process a lot easier. As I said, 2 slots per month, and that'll be all that'll be available. Um, to give you an idea, as I say, of some of the previous ones that I've done. This one comes from Carl Farrell, and it was in Longford. One of the earlier ones I've done. And Carl says, I'm coming to the end of a 1970s detached house renovation and contacted John for advice. I remember this one actually quite well. Um, for advice on the boundary of the property, rejuvenating own shrubs, a pond area which needed refreshment, a new patio area, and lawn reduction. That was a big thing, was the lawn was huge and he wanted to get a reduction in it. We did an online consultation via Zoom. Yeah, that's the other thing. All of them are done by Zoom. And we walked, Carol walked through the garden, showed me different areas. There was a little bit of a questionnaire beforehand as well. And it was an excellent consultation where he got access to John's experience of gardening, suggested some changes that he wouldn't have thought of in his wildest dreams, and he's currently acting on. Thanks very much, John. So that one was, it was an old house that was being rejuvenated. The house itself got a facelift, was brought into, a modern look, but the garden had a lot of old style features, many of which Carol wanted to keep for sentimental reasons. Huge lawn, which wanted to reduce, fruit trees, which needed to be added, pond, which needed to be rejuvenated. And yeah, we got through a lot in that. And yeah, it has been progressing ever since. Another one that I had from Danny and Rena, they were recommended to John by a friend who had previously used his services and were very happy. From the get-go, we found him extremely easy to deal with, knowledgeable and practical. He gave us a very simple to-do list, which was exactly what we needed. He knew exactly what plants and shrubs would be suitable on our tricky site, so we feel we offset the cost of his service very, very quickly by not wasting money on plants that would never have taken. All in all, we're delighted with his service. John is a lovely guy. I would highly recommend to anyone looking for an expert in gardening and landscaping. Yeah, that was a really interesting one, and that's a good example. So that was Danny and Rena had just completed a rebuild of a cottage, created into a totally different house, beautiful house, but on an extremely tricky site. So severe slopes, slopes in more than one direction. So multi-directional slopes, high banks, tricky ground, a lot of stone in it, but and a certain level of budget for year one, and then assigning more budget for year two, and so on. So it wasn't going to be something that you could come in and do, a huge job in one year and take the garden from building site to garden. It was a staged approach, and by using by having the initial consultation, they were able to take the right steps and, as they said, not waste any money. And now, a couple of years later, and I've been involved at a couple of stages down along the line since then, it has been a huge transformation, and it's a fabulous, fabulous garden now. Um, so that was a really interesting one, and it's one that's still evolving since then. But the initial, I suppose, consultation, it means that you're taking the right steps. So at that stage, for example, there was no curbs, there was no boundaries, there was a wall needed to be built. There was, steps into different areas. There was um, potential ideas for a kids' play area. Would that work? Could it work? It was on a height. How do we take the next steps? And those steps have been taken now, and the transformation over whatever it is, 3 or 4 years has been immense there. Um, Another one with large, yeah, new build patio and garden planting. So yeah, actually, this is Peter and Emma, just for transparency, Peter is my cousin, but that didn't influence the work that I was doing for him. We consulted and chose Master My Garden, because we're both gardening novices with a new build and didn't know where to start. Now this one was slightly different because a lot of the beds, there was a garden design plan in place, and a lot of the beds were in that garden design and were built, during the build stage. And then, the I came in at that stage to talk about what plants would work. And again, not neither of them are professional gardeners or gardening for a long time. These are people moving into a house for the first time, gardening as such for the first time, with a good bit of interest but not much knowledge. And now everything flows. We have lots of colour throughout the year. We look forward to watching the flowers and plants grow and see which ones are our favourite. In addition, our grass and a number of trees on the site were struggling, and John was able to advise on what was needed to rejuvenate these, feed the lawn, etc. And that was an interesting one because, again, I said there was a garden plan in place here, but that garden plan had, different trees recommended, and it was a garden plan that was done from an office somewhere. There was not a thing wrong with the garden plan in terms of, its, how it looked. It was a really nice garden plan. But as I say, it was done from an office miles away because the trees that went in, they really, really were not suitable for the site. Now, since then, we have done a lot of work on them. We've got them going. They are establishing really well at this stage, but it has been a hard slog and a constant work to get them to where they are now. And so this is what I'm saying at those earliest stages, especially on new build, consultation like that can be worth, some people you will offset the cost of the consultation really, really quickly because you won't waste any money on trees, shrubs, plants, etc. Um, Another one was an outdoor school for a local school. They had received it funding for an outdoor classroom, and at this stage they asked me to come in as a consultant on it. We designed an enclosed garden, timber fencing, archway, giving the classroom a defined feeling and privacy. So to create a kind of a zone that, that was useful, and screened it off, give them a bit of privacy, made it feel like they were outside connected to nature, but also that they were, working within this zone. So it was ideal. Hedging was used then to soften the view. Flower beds were added with various shrubs, uh, perennials, bulbs, etc. Focus on attracting pollinators, and that was very good from an educational perspective and an interest perspective, and also teaching the children to be a positive influence within their landscape. So yeah, that was a really interesting one. It turned out lovely. There was bark chip put down on the ground, picnic benches put in, and yeah, it's really nice. I'd like to see that in more schools. So yeah, thanks to John for his expert guidance and practical approach. So that's just kind of some of the type of consultations that I've done in the past. It isn't, as I say, this isn't a garden design consultation. I don't do garden design. I understand some garden design concepts, but generally speaking, I'm not a garden designer. So if you want a garden designer, I'm not your person. But if you want somebody who is able to take you from idea to plan to, a garden that you can be proud of, whatever that is, whether that's, as I say, a kitchen garden, um, cut flower beds, whatever it is, and to give you the right guidance so that you're not, I suppose, you're taking the right steps all the time. That's what these consultations are. And as I say, two slots, Friday the 26th of June, and then after that, once we get into July, two slots will open up for July. It's likely to be the last Friday of each month. That's likely to be what it is. I have a big birthday coming up myself in July, so I'm not certain on July's dates yet. They will be confirmed very, very soon. But for June, it is Friday the 26th of June, and there's two slots available. The consultation itself is €200. It's, a 1 hour-ish Zoom call. You get the recording afterwards, so you can watch it back and you can have a look and see what was, you won't need to be scribbling notes. Anything we talk about, and anything we talk about, you can watch it back and nail it down. But beforehand, there's a set of questions that you get, kind of outlines what your goal is, what you want to move, where you are, what you want to move towards, what it is that you're struggling with, if there's a potential budget involved, and it gives you an idea of what next steps to take the whole way along the journey. So if that is of interest to you, I know that it's definitely of interest to some people because I do get messages. Last week somebody asked me to do one for them, which I did. Somebody was stuck getting set up on a vegetable garden, and yeah, they had a lot of the work done, but they were just at a point where they weren't really sure how to take it to the next stage, and we've done that now, and yeah, they'll be up and running, and all as well. So if that's of interest to you, link is in the show notes of this episode. It's also on the website. You can book through there, and 2 slots per month. There won't be any more. So if you are interested, just click on and book on there. So just an episode, not an episode about a gardening topic as such, but hopefully one that will be of interest to some of you. We're back to our regular episodes now next week, and that's been this week's episode. Thanks for listening, and until the next time, happy gardening.